welcome back to Masters of Modern. I am your host, Alex Kess. Welcome back, Ben. I might have peaked a little bit, but you're back on the show.
I am back indeed. I'm back indeed. It's been, at least for this week, I'll be back. It's been a bit of an uphill battle, getting some recognizable amounts of health back. I'm doing pretty well overall. I've been back in the office a little bit, venturing out, but as it is in my nature, I want to get back to full speed, full work as fast as I can, and you know, I just am not allowed to. I have to slow it down. So I've been, doing my best to do that. And but I am excited to be talking Magic again. I've got to play quite a bit of Crimson Vow, actually. I probably played 3 sealed events for pre-release weekend, and then another, drafted it. So I know the cards decently well already.
So reviews on the street are that, because I have not gotten to play Limited. This weekend was busy doing other things. Reviews on the street are bad. Like, it's not a fun Limited format. Would you corroborate that, or fun so far?
It was fine. I enjoyed it enough. There was a lot of predictable stuff that you get, like, a lot of the normal stuff that you see in just like building a Limited environment. You're going to have a lot of redundant sort of creatures and types and effects and things like that. I don't know. Overall, I enjoyed it. I didn't think it was too bad. It felt like there was a pretty heavy, like a lean into people playing black, white, and red. That seemed to be very consistent. Like lots and lots and lots of black and white. I don't know, but I enjoyed it enough. It wasn't the most incredible format I'd ever played, but I certainly enjoyed myself.
Sure. I'm excited to try it out. There's like stuff like, it looks to me like there might be depth in graveyardy synergies that maybe people don't lean into trying at first, or it takes longer to figure out what cards are good and bad, which is always a set that I like. But on the other hand, apparently it's like very bomb heavy, and just like sometimes you'll just grab rares that are just better than what other people are doing, so it's not worthwhile. So
that definitely did happen. I definitely got bombed out a couple different times.
You're just like, oh, that's a card I can't beat. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This demon that sacrifices another creature to copy itself at the end of every turn. Well, if I don't have a way to kill this, I'm just dead in 2 turns. Yeah. Sweet.
So for those joining for the first time, this is a Modern-focused podcast. We do other content once in a while, but today is our Crimson Vow set review / going over what cards are probably the best to play in Modern. We'll touch upon some other ones for maybe some other formats that we like, but really it's about kind of focusing on the Modern format. If you're also here for your first time, hit that subscribe button. We have awesome guests here regularly. We had Nikachu on last week. You definitely should check out that. We're also last week did a bunch of coverage for Magic Fest Vegas, or not Magic Fest Vegas, but Magic the Gathering Las Vegas. We did a whole coverage thing with Corbin Hostler. So if you look at that, there's deck techs and interviews and content also on our Twitter at the MMcast. So make sure to check all of that stuff out. It was really cool being there. Speaking from the past before I've actually gone there, and I'm assuming all of the content that we were able to get was really cool. So make sure to check that out.
It was excellent. It was phenomenal content.
Yep. And also right before that, we're doing a new show on Sundays. We did our first pilot. We'll probably start that up more in December, but wanted to get like a troubleshoot out version of it out the door. So it was me and Ben playing Modern, so check that out as well. And last but not least, this episode is brought to you by TCG Player affiliate codes down below and patrons, the people that just make this podcast happen. So definitely check out patreon.com/MMcast. You get early access to the episodes. They come out a full week early. We record them Wednesday. Well, they record them Wednesday. They release on Patreon on Thursday, and then the episodes come out on Tuesday. And then for everyone that is a normal listener, these are now coming out every Tuesday. It's a new thing we are doing. So we've moved this to Tuesdays because we wanted to give Monday a little bit more room to breathe when we come up with stream content, and it lets it so that we realized that we were releasing like 8 pieces of content all at once on Monday, and to spread it out, podcast episodes are now Tuesday morning releases. So make sure, stay tuned every Tuesday. This is when the podcast is showing up. Vow. So
Crimson Vow. It's I'm going to start out right just out the gates here with a real medium powered punch to the jaw with this opinion. Really, real medium powered hot take, a lukewarm take. This set is, those were all setups. This set is just very medium in power. There's just most of the mechanics are, it's not even that they're not cool or that the effects the cards are creating aren't cool, because they actually are. And I think that some of the stuff that they're doing is particularly like, I think it gets lost a little in the redundancy of what some of these cards are doing. So I actually think there will be a few standouts that we're going to notice as we talk through, where it's like, oh, like this similar cycle in this mythic, like this is clearly the good one, but they all feel similarly powered because of this effect. And I think we're going to see some of that. So I expect to see that. I think some of the commons and uncommons are actually more powerful than the rares in some cases. So I think that those are going to be standouts as well. But it does feel like they've leaned back into a a more like moderately powered standard set. It's the first one of these in a little while that has really felt this way.
Yeah, there's definitely. Well, one thing that like I feel that this is, 2 years away from Throne of Eldraine, right? So for people who don't know, the design schedule for a Magic set is about 2 years, and it's a little bit longer than when you talk like putting the plan into motion on what it's going to be, but like really design, product development, and then tuning all happens, and then art and all that stuff happens in about a 2 year period. And this, I feel the fact that Throne of Eldraine came out and food was so blatantly pushed, and blood tokens seem so blatantly underpushed, and like it has a lot of that kind of like worrisomeness to me. The other thing that it feels like to me is that really Throne of Eldraine, it's the return to blocks, and it has kind of a weird block problem that old blocks had, which I didn't expect it to, which was like blood tokens feel like they work so much better with the mechanics from Midnight Hunt, where like Flashback and Disturb got you a creature into play, were both key parts of the mechanic, versus Decayed, which almost feels more important here, where it's much more about grinding on the board. And so it like there's like a weird disconnect. I'm actually like, people have like a lot of complaints about the new set, the new Midnight, or the double feature, Innistrad double feature, which I don't know if you've seen anything on this, but basically
I've seen people asking the cost of it. That's what I saw people talking about.
So basically it's pretty much entirely just these two sets combined, but all of the cards have a similar frame to the basic lands, the special lands from this set. So they have like the black and white kind of effect. So I'm assuming Rick or Marshall are putting those on screen, showing some of the examples of what they have from what this set looks like, which some people don't like. I actually really like it. I get their problem that like it's hard to read and know what the difference between cards in, and the less signifiers you have, the harder it becomes. That's, I guess, a problem for sure. It's like the version of this I'm most excited by. I think these sets are going to play really magically together, where them separate almost feel lacking. And that's kind of the thing I'm most looking forward to from a limited perspective. And then from a power level perspective, yeah, I think commons and uncommons are really the place where a lot of these cards are going to shine. Though I do think there's a lot of cards in this set that might surprise the world in like how they're like a little weird. Like all of the mythic cycle that like this enters the battlefield, exile a card.
Yeah, that's those are the ones I was talking about, where I was saying like one of these is going to probably stand out because they're just a little hard to read through and imagine the way they're going to play as you read them. I know what they do. Like I understand cards like that, but as I read it and try to imagine the cost, the stats, how that's going to play in the game, what's the likelihood, the different card types, like what do I want to exile, all that stuff, it's difficult to sort of just visualize, but it's one of those things where sometimes those types of cards miss you. And then the one that stands out that becomes like the most played creature in Modern all of a sudden, and you're like, oh, that was really good, and I just couldn't quite comprehend it, you know?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No, yeah, I agree with that for sure. And like this set's even blood tokens, like I'm actually pretty high on blood tokens, even as like under push as they feel compared to food, where I think they thought blood tokens were good and then under pushed them, where like they thought food was bad and so over pushed them. But I think like it's still a pretty devalued format. We're already seeing some of the cards see play in Modern. There's like cool artifact decks that are taking advantage of one of the cards we'll talk about. So I think there is like putting artifact bodies into play efficiently, and then those artifacts being good, be it they're just guaranteed cycling, they have discard matters effects, they can be used for graveyard strategies or reanimator, but have other serviceable tools, is like something to pay attention to. So we'll get into that as well. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. Are you a small business owner, or are you thinking about becoming one? Does the legal side of things like incorporating and contracts seem daunting? Do you just wish you could ask an attorney for help without paying huge hourly rates? I know when I started my business, it was really daunting about all the different issues that were facing me on this side, and having someone to go to and talk to, or someone that I would know that would know what they were talking about, would have been really helpful. And we are excited to tell you about a big opportunity to do just that coming up in December. Attorney Andrea Sager, a small business specialist and the founder of thelegalpreneur.com, is hosting a comprehensive 5-day challenge for a flat fee of $19. Just $19. What is the 5-day Legalpreneur Challenge. It is an opportunity for our community of small business entrepreneurs to get legally protected and prepared for exponential growth in a new year for only $19. December 6th through 10th is a challenge week featuring one legal training video sent each morning, one live support call each afternoon, one downloadable guide for each evening, and a community to support you through the legal anxieties that all entrepreneurs face. This is a group of people that you have access to that I wish I had when I was starting my business, and this is a great way of getting access to that for only $19. Each day, the challenge will target the most intimidating areas of the law that are often overlooked by small business entrepreneurs. Daily topics include entity formation, contracts, trademarks, copyrights, and creating an annual legal review checklist. And 5 free downloadable guides are included. Challenge Week is also supplemented by a 5-day Legalpreneur Challenge course that organizes all of the content in one place, forever accessible by Challenge Week participants. So even if you go through this whole process and you need to be able to get access to this afterwards, there's a easy to go to location to find it. All of this for the one-time price of $19. And when you use our affiliate link at thecontractvault.com/ref/the MMcast, labeled somewhere around my head, or by clicking the link in the description to this episode, your help support this show, and we super appreciate it. Get your business handled. Thanks so much for checking this out, and enjoy the episode. So before we get started, I do have one thing that we've made a challenge. I have to challenge all of our listeners and you, Mr. Bateman. So this is the thing we do every week. It's the Masters of Modern Trivia show, and I am going to ask y'all in the audience and Mr. Ben here a trivia question, and you all have to answer it. And the way you're going to answer it is you're going to put a comment below with your answer. Now, if you get it wrong, which sometimes happens, last week more people got it wrong than right, you have to hit that like button and that subscribe button. That's the bet you're making. You're betting likes and subscribes. I'll
make that bet.
And if you get it right, you just get to brag about it. You don't have to hit like and subscribe. We'll appreciate it. You don't have to hit that. Ben will have to hit like and subscribe though. So if you get it,
I'll do it. I'm committed.
He'll hit that like button for every. He has a lot of different YouTube accounts, so he'll have to go through all of them. So Ben, how many in Magic total? And remember, him and Ha a little bit, give people time to answer. How many in Magic total creatures have been printed with Trample and Death Touch?
Oh, at one point I knew this.
I will give you a small clue. There is one creature. No, I'm not going to give you a small clue. That was my clue. And to confirm, it has to have both abilities inherently. It can't be like original Odric who gains them if you have both creatures in play. So Death Touch and Trample.
At one point I knew this because I learned it because I answered it wrong once, I think. And it was you asking it, I think. And I think when I answered last time I said 0 because I thought it was a trick question, and that's wrong. So I think that this is that thing that happens to my brain sometimes, or it's going to be 0. It's either going to be 0 or this number I guess right now that's what I think.
What are those two options?
I think it's either. I'm going to say it's 1.
It is 0.
Son of a gun! I was right.
So a caveat, which I thought maybe gave it away too much, is that Crystalline Giant was printed since we made this trivia question, which is the 3-mana artifact for Mycoria. That at the beginning of combat, you choose a kind of counter at random between a bunch of them that does include Death Touch and Trample, and it gets those counters. So you can, after 2 combats, get lucky and have Death Touch and Trample as its first 2 abilities off of Crystalline Giant. But that's it gaining it through an ability. It's not printed standard with it. So there are 0 cards. So the reason people don't know is Trample and Death Touch interact with each other very wonkily. You only have to do 1 damage to each creature, and then it tramples over. But the rules of that are pretty esoteric, especially for new players, that they don't like printing them on the same card. And it's also just very powerful. And so that doesn't get printed ever, or has not yet been printed. There's going to be a mythic. It'll be like First Strike and Death Touch, right? They're like First Strike and Death Touch wasn't on a card until like Glissa got it. And then it was like, that was like why she was so good. It was partially she just like Death Touch like works really weird with combat mechanics. All right. So if you got it right, if you hit that 0 button in the comments, congratulations. You don't have to do anything. You can, but you don't have to. But if you put any number but 0, hit that like and subscribe button because you want to hear more content like this. There's at least one trivia question every week. That's the bare minimum promise. All right, let's talk this set. First card, we're going in whatever order that this app makes it happen. Cobbled Lancer. It's a blue for a 3/3. As an additional cost to cast this spell, exile a creature card from your graveyard. So it's a 1 mana 3/3 with that effect. And then for a 3 to blue, you can exile it to draw a card from your graveyard. It is a zombie horse.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple different reasons that I think that this card is decent. Obviously, anytime a creature has the added value of living in your graveyard with draw a card for, like, just, you can do that later in the game. Like, it's pretty good, just extra value later on. Though the world in which you have a 3/3 on turn 1, that world exists. It's not the, like, most legit world. It's like, there's a deck that's going to play, Hangerback Walker or like Walking Ballista or something like that. That's going to like play that on turn 1, then exile it from the graveyard with this. But if you're exiling it from so I mean, it's one of those things. You don't really want to be down a card to get a 3/3 on turn 1. That's not the format we're in anymore. You can just play Nacatl and just get a 3/3 on turn 1 if you want to.
Sure.
You could just Dragon's Rage Channeler. Like there's just a million of them that kind of function that way.
Yeah, I think this has 3 key features to me that make it interesting. One is it's creature type. There aren't many 1 mana 3/3 zombies that you can get into play, right? And so like this being a 4/4 on turn 3, like if you on turn 1 play something that lets you put a card, a zombie into your graveyard or somehow like something happens there. Turn 2, you play this, exiling that and something else. And then turn 3, you play a zombie lord. Now you're talking about having like a 5/5 for 1 that you played on turn 2, right? So there is things that this works well with. It also, like, as you mentioned, the fact that the ability, the draw card is at an instant speed too is interesting to me. Like, right, it's not, a lot of times there's like, this heck can only be done as a sorcery riders that make this kind of lame. But the fact that you could just like have counter magic open, let them go, and then use this is like an interesting feature. And
what was that card called? A corpse picker?
Things. I don't know.
What was that? Corpse picker, right? It's like, and it's the 4 mana black flyer that you could, it costs 3 less if a creature has died this turn. Is that what it was called? You know what card I'm talking about?
No. That sounds like a card.
I'm going to look up one more word on here and say, if not, we'll just, Bone Picker. That's what it's called.
Okay.
Yeah, it's black 3, the black 3/2 flying death touch bird. This spell costs 3 less to cast this turn if a creature has died this turn. So if you play 4 of this and 4 of those, and you play the Ballista plan I'm talking about, you're going to have a 3/3 on turn 1 most of the time, provided you have an artifact creature. And Ballista, or you can play the Stonecoil Serpent or any of those creatures, those things. And then if you're playing any kind of like Delirium style deck, you benefit from those going into your graveyard because you get creature and artifact. So like the deck sets up pretty nicely that way. I could see this, like, as I talk it out, this sounds like the makings of the beginnings of something kind of fun. I mean, a 3/2 flyer on turn 1 is solid.
That seems like a pioneer deck at best. But yeah, I do think this card misses it, but it definitely has a lot of features that are really interesting. I think that's a cool deck idea. There's like a lot of things that work together. Next card, Concealing Curtains. Black 0/4 Defender, 2 black, transform Concealing Curtains, activate only as a sorcery. So it's a 1 mana 0/4 Defender wall that you flip, and it becomes a 3/4 menace that lets you Thoughtseize your opponent.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so it's 1 black for a wall 0/4 Defender that you can pay 2 and a black at sorcery speed to flip it, and you get to Thoughtseize your opponent for a non-land. They then draw. You get to they discard it. They don't put it on the bottom, but you get to have them discard a card, and then they draw a card.
Okay, got it. And what's it flip into?
A 3/4 menace eye horror.
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah, so for 4 mana, you get a 3/4 menace that does the Vendilion click effect to your opponent, right? They discard a card and then get to draw a random card that's worse than the best card that you were able to pick from their hand. Or you get a 0/4 for 1 that can block Ragavan all day.
True, yeah, it's particularly relevant.
That then format. Late game is relevant.
Yeah, it's a little expensive, and the fact that they get another card out of it is a little concerning. But I mean, I think there's something cool here.
Yeah, I think it's a black version of Vendilion Click that has a potential of scene play. It's honestly, if I were to make a top 10, it's on my top 10, just because like being a 1-mana card that can block Ragavan and turn off the value engine there, but then can also Thoughtseize your opponent or be valuable late game and then give them a random card seems valuable in today's day and age. And it's not a bad top deck, like, right? Like, worst case scenario, you have a 3/4 menace for 4. In the same way, like, sometimes you just cast Street Wraith. Voldaren Epicure. Red creature vampire, 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each opponent and create a blood token. So this is theoretically it's a 2-mana version that gets you a 1/1 out of it, of a what's it called? The vampire with menace, Blood Crazed Neonite.
Oh yes,
right. Because you get to keep the vampire, but it costs an extra mana to do the looting effect. That is definitely worse. But in a vampire deck that's trying to do more of a madness angle, being able to keep your 1/1 vampire that then gets buffed by your vampire lords, and then using that blood token to be a discard outlet. Like, the one thing like that I will say about this set for modern is that vampires and zombies and to be honest, spirits, werewolves, and humans are all different levels of close to being modern decks. Zombies and vampires were the two that have the largest gap, because spirits already is a deck, right? Like, some cards make it best. Humans is obviously a deck. Werewolves I don't think is anywhere close even now of becoming a deck, but I do think vampires and zombies especially have gotten a lot of different small tools that I could imagine coming together to create a deck. The exploit deck that has come out of this set, a lot of those cards are really good in zombie shells. This card specifically offers a lot of benefits to the, like, really good madness vampire cards or bloodghasts, right? So, like, being able to 1 mana play Voldaren Epicure, on turn 2 play one of the other vampire like 1-drops, which there are a lot of powerful ones, including one that gives every vampire madness, and then using the blood token to discard either another 1-drop or a bloodghast. This
also plays well. This card also plays well with any bloodthirst or spectacle strategies, which, you know, in red, like, those are definitely things that you want to pay attention to. There are some aggressive. There are definitely some aggressive red cards that you can take advantage of with bloodthirst, and then spectacle. I mean, those cards, the 2 good red spectacle cards, have both seen a significant amount of modern play. We definitely see Light Up the Stage and the Lightning Bolt that I can't think of the name of right now, but you know, in a red deck that wants to take advantage of more of them, I could see this card being played.
Yeah, for sure. This is what I kind of said at the beginning. There's a lot of grindiness in the power level of cards in this set that pushes some of them maybe just above the top, but, like, it's hard to see what that looks like.
Yeah. Next up, we've got Cemetery Gatekeeper. So, vampire, red, 1 for a 2/1 first strike. When Cemetery Gatekeeper enters the battlefield, exile a card from a graveyard. This is part of the cycle we mentioned. Whenever a player plays a land or casts a spell, if it shares a card type with the exiled card, Cemetery Gatekeeper deals 2 damage to that player. Now, notice it doesn't say whenever an opponent, it says whenever a player. So this is not a red hate bear per se, because it also affects you. Sometimes they do, but sometimes in the past, the red cards have only affected your opponent. This is parallel. So if you do exile a land card from this because you want to keep a low curve, every time you play a land, you're going to get shocked for 2. But it is a 2/1 first strike, so it comes down and attacks pretty aggressively. This is the most expensive of the cards in this cycle right now, I believe. It's the one that people believe has the highest likelihood of being good. I think it's probably because of the thing I just said, which is that if you exile a land with this fairly early, it makes every fetch land deck, I'm going to shock you for 2. And if you're playing it in, like, a mono red deck, you're going to just play basics.
Every fetch land is 4.
Sorry, that's what I mean. 2 per land.
Yeah,
every fetch land is a shock for 4.
That's so much. Like, if you play this and you exile a land and you're a deck that doesn't need to fetch or isn't playing fetch lands, you are ahead. And a 2/1 first strike is not a body to, like, laugh at. And that's, you know, and that you don't have to do land. If it's a matchup where you would rather do instants and sorceries because you're playing against control or planeswalk, like, you know, and so there's a bunch of different options here that I think are really good. This card's sweet. I really like this card.
Imagine playing this card alongside Gritting. Imagine playing this alongside Gritting Ignis. You remember that card?
Yes.
Red 1 for a 2/1 elemental. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, if that player had another land enter the battlefield under his or her control this turn, it deals 3 damage to that player. So you play 4 Ignis and 4 of this card with 4 Path to Exile, and just, like, you just wreck them so hard, just, like, every time.
Yep.
They, like,
Ghost Quarter. Like, you basically are playing, like, a damage version of the Ghost Quarter Path Aven Mind Sensor decks.
Arbiter.
Yeah,
like the Leonin Arbiter deck. You're like, I guess you'd have to pick which side. Do you want them to get lands and take damage, or do you want them to never be able to get lands?
I actually think that like this is not a crazy angle, right? Like Leonin Arbiter locks them out of the game, but it doesn't kill them. So you still have to kill them. This kills them. The easiest way to stop people from doing stuff is to kill them. And this might do it. I don't think that's not a deck. I think that's a cool idea. Next card.
Reading Ignis, you heard it here first.
Next card is definitely more of a sideboard card, but Dawnheart Geist, 1 and a white for a 1/3 Spirit Warlock. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you gain 2 life. There are already enchantment decks. Those enchantment decks like having ways to survive for longer, and a 1/3 for 1 that gains them 2 life every time they cast a spell in their deck seems pretty legit for them. That's kind of the main home it is. Maybe a sideboard card, but it's definitely a good option for enchantment decks.
It's well cost, that's what I'd say about it. I know from having played against Enchantress in multiple formats, when they get going, it gets pretty out of hand pretty fast, and this is a nice way. Also that blocks Ragavans pretty nicely. And it's a spirit. Yeah, there's a few different things going for it here. You could lean into a couple different versions, but yeah, interesting.
Dorethia, Vengeful Victim, white, blue, legendary creature spirit, 4/4 flying. So it's a flying 4/4 for 2. When it attacks or blocks, sacrifice it at the end of combat though. So you get 1 attack or block out of your 2 mana 4/4. That's still a hefty creature and a lot of damage for that. But then it has Disturb, and then you can turn target creature into a Geist of Saint-Traft. So whenever this creature, it's an enchantment aura, you attach it to a creature. Whenever this creature attacks or creates, whenever this creature attacks, create a 4/4 white spirit creature token with flying that's tapped and attacking. Sacrifice the token at the end of combat. So it's a weird lightning elemental, right? 4 mana for 4/4 that dies at the end of turn, but you get the whole, like you play it and it sits there until it's relevant. So it could just be a big wall in the way of your opponent being able to get through. A semi-removal spell that then you can attack for 4, and then it draws you a cool enchantment that makes angels.
Why aren't you just playing this in the Geist of Saint-Traft deck though? That's what I want to know. Because I just want to cast this on turn 2, attack with it, get my 4 damage, and then play my Geist. And then before I attack on turn 4 with my Geist, turn my Geist into a double Geist, and my Geist now attacks for 8 in the air.
I am sad that this isn't just Geist of Saint-Traft.
Yeah,
it's a legendary creature. Why is this some random other ghost? Why can't this just be Geist? It's doing the Geist thing.
You're saying why can't it be named like Geist, some other name, like Geist this and that?
Yeah, Geist 2, Geist Night of the Disturbed or something. I don't know. Just
they do it all the time. Yeah, it's a fun card. I mean, I've always believed pretty wholeheartedly in the like hexproof angle. You know, we obviously get the hexproof decks, the all-in hexproof decks, like the Boggles decks, and we also get Infect. So we kind of covered those bases already in Modern when they get good. But I've still always believed in the like Invisible Stalker, whatever the green 1/1 can't be blocked by anything. So that deck with like swords and equipment.
This is actually kind of really cool in that deck because you get to play it on turn 2, and then it just blocks Ragavan. It blocks Dragon Rage Channeler. It's a removal spell for those creatures. It then dies fine, but they like are going to be resistant to attacking anyways with it in play. And then if you play if you put this on a Invisible Stalker,
Savant Ledgewalker, or
a Savant Ledgewalker, it's a untargetable flying hexproof 5/5
really
for 2.
It's gonna do a lot of damage real fast. Yeah. I've always believed there was something to those decks. It's just the further we've gotten from CMC being low enough to actually do stuff like that, the harder it's gotten to believe. But you know, I've always wanted to do something. And
that's one thing I did want to say. The Disturb mechanic in this set of like put R's onto thing is another super grindy, hard to evaluate mechanic, right? Like it's bad on paper. So how do I evaluate these cards when a lot of them are just flashback, like cards that are great with flashback in your graveyard, like the cat that's really cute that gives a creature cure. There's now Curiosity that's flashback. That card's kind of probably good. I want to talk about that. Yeah, we have that coming up in a second. We have there's one that gives +1/+1 on flying for 3. There's one that gives double strike for 3. Like these are abilities that are strong that wouldn't be playable if they were just an aura in your hand. But because you can mill them, you can discard them, or they could just be on this creature that's decent that dies and you get to play back. They might be playable. We can't talk about all of them, but that's what I'm saying when this says like super grindy and hard to evaluate. Next card is Graph Reaver, 1 and a black, 3/3, zombie warrior. Exploit. When you exploit a creature, when Graph Reaver exploits a creature, destroy target planeswalker. At the beginning of your upkeep, Graph Reaver deals 1 damage to you. So you either have a destroy target planeswalker for 2, that also triggers a creature dying and it puts a creature in your graveyard, etc. Or you have a zombie that enters play after you sacrificed a token or whatever to create a 3/3 for 2.
I think you also just said it a second ago, but like, I mean, yeah, two mana to destroy a planeswalker is an effect that is played in Modern frequently.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's something people are happy to do. It doesn't. This can just sacrifice itself and destroy a planeswalker, right? So
right. Well, and you don't have to exploit. This could just be a 2 mana 3/3. Right?
Yeah,
you can on curve, if they don't have a planeswalker, you just get a on rate 3/3 for 2 in the zombie deck with the right creature types that then, if they have a planeswalker, is an insane card because it's a 2 mana 3/3. It's a 2 mana kill a target planeswalker. And if you have a creature you don't care about, it's, it levels up from there. It's a 2 mana 3/3 that kills a planeswalker and sacrifices a decayed zombie token or whatever. So like, no, I think this card's dope. Yeah, definitely on my list of best cards. Now, you asked, we wanted to talk about it. Mischievous Catgeist, 1 blue for a 1/1 cat spirit. When Mischievous Catgeist deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. It has Disturb 2 blue, enchanted creature. It's an aura. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. I think this card's really good.
This card's really good, and I played this card in Limited a whole bunch. I played this in like 2 different decks, and I was surprised by just like, granted, Limited's a little different, obviously. This doesn't line up in terms of its actual mana cost with Modern decks. But what's interesting about this card is, so if they have a way to not kill this or like not lose something, that's fine. But often it's going to cost them a piece of removal. Now, pieces of removal that burn it out and exile it are going to make this card seem really bad. But like, a lot of stuff doesn't do that, right? A lot of the pieces of removal are going to be Lightning Bolt, or they're going to be Fatal Push, or they're going to be something that is just going to destroy this card. And you're probably playing this in a deck where the back half is strong. If you play it and get in once, it's replaced itself. It's done its job. You're fine, right? You don't care. So the fact that this card, like, they have to deal with it in a very specific way or have the right kind of blocker, because killing this is actually not that sweet for them, because probably this is in your deck to put on some hexproof unblockable thing or some flying thing that's going to get way better now that you've got this out there.
Right. Well, like this card in Boggles, like this is a card that makes me want to add blue to Boggles, because like on the front side you have another creature that's just good to put a bunch of auras on, because they either block it. They have to. It continues the process of them having to, like create the abyss, right? Like this thing is going to draw them a card and do infinite damage because it's now a 5/5, right? So like that on its own is good, and then obviously in the back end, the fact that it's a creature that draws you into an enchantment to trigger all your other stuff is really good as well. How many? I can't think of a 2 mana card that does this. Like, for rate, isn't this the best card? Isn't this the best Ovidian ever printed?
Just like a 2 mana card that just draws you a card when it hits.
Yeah, I don't think that exists. Like, please in the comments below, comment the card that I'm not thinking of. But I believe that every version of this card that has been printed at 3 mana or other.
I think there's one.
Because like there's a lot of looters, right? There's a lot of cards that do damage and
there's
loot.
There's Vidalcan Heretic, which is green blue for a 1/1 that does this.
Okay.
Back from like
so gold
Conflux,
cards,
I think.
Sure.
Yeah, Conflux had one, and I think there's a blue version or something. Like I'm pretty sure like this exists, but yeah, there's not a lot of them, especially and definitely not at uncommon and not with upside.
Yeah, this card seems nuts, actually. Like for a rate, like the fact that we're at a point in Magic where this card is not being talked about is like an insane card. Like Ophidian was at one point the best creature in Magic.
Yeah,
and this,
I mean, it's still a sweet card. I'll still draft it in Cube any day of the week.
And this card is better than Ophidian. I think just in every way. So yeah, this card's nuts. All about it. Cemetery Prowler, 1 green Vigilance Wolf 3/4. Whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, exile a card from a graveyard. What's cool is it enters the battlefield or attacks. Exile card from graveyard. Spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each card type they share with cards exiled with Cemetery Prowler. So basically, what's powerful about this card, other than the fact that it's like decent continuous graveyard hate, it's the right cost, 3 mana for 3/4. Vigilance is good too because it is also defensive, and it does offer some amount of ramp. I think this is just outside of playable for modern. I think it's like a little too expensive. If this was a 2 mana 2/1 that did all the exact same things, I'd be probably more into it. But
the problem with cost reducers in modern, the issue with cost reducers in modern is that unless they cost 1 or do some really clever way of doing it, if they cost rate like they usually do, like this, or like a card like Cloud Key or something you'd play that is just like, 3 mana and like makes your deck faster, things you're playing in modern traditionally are going to cost only colored mana. Like sometimes they'll cost like 1 and 1, but like usually you're not going to be playing a lot of like 1 and 2 things where like it costing 2 is going to save the day, because you have to assume you're not going to have this card active. So then you have to be able to play those cards for their non-cost reduction, which means you have to be comfortable at those rates. So that's where cards like this get sticky, because I do think this card's cool. It can trigger multiple card types. You can exile a creature and a sorcery and an artifact, and all those things get cheaper, but it still requires you to get to 3 mana. Take, for instance, let's say we're like, okay, we'll all play a mana creature. So this will come down on turn 2. Well, your mana creatures aren't going to get any cheaper with this card. So now, like, so it's like you have to play this careful balance with cost reducers. I've always noticed this is the case. I think this is why anytime I've ever tried to build a cost reducer deck, I like to do it with instants and sorceries, and I like to do it with cards with flashback. That's always been my MO, is like the Electromancer, Lingering Souls deck I always tried to build.
Yep.
Where you could play like Electromancer on turn 2, turn 3 Souls, flashback Souls. I always thought that was like really clever and cool, and it's really hard to get away with cost reducers otherwise.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, my just like there are better 2-drop versions of it that guarantee you the card type you want to give cost reduction to, and a lot of them, the only ones that see play are Electromancer and Peril.
Totally.
Like, yeah.
Next up, we got Aerith, Tormented Prophet, red, blue, 1, 2/4. Human Wizard, legendary creature. If you would draw a card, exile the top 2 cards of your library instead. You may play those cards this turn. This is an interesting card. It's, I feel like this card probably more than anything is a storm card, right?
Yes. Well, like, for sure. Like having this in play with storm, and you're storming off. Now every card draws you 2 cards. Every time you would draw a card, you draw 2 cards instead. You have to cast it that turn, but Storm is trying to win that turn. Yeah. Is a pretty amazing card advantage engine. I don't know if it's quite good enough. It is a 2/4 for 3, which is like a pretty thick body to get in the way of stuff while you're trying to set up. And it is a must kill, which like
it doesn't die to bolt.
And it doesn't die to bolt. So like those are all nice things.
It is going to die to Unholy Heat, which is most of like what people are playing these days anyway. But I mean, this card's cool. I think this card for rate and its colors is ripe to make like Izzet decks fun at the very least. I think there's probably a deck. It's hard to imagine totally really like at 3 mana that this would be in just like some wizard control deck where it would like really go that nuts.
Sure.
Because like those decks want to be casting things at instant speed. So this does just really to me feel like a storm card. But and again, problem there is the storm decks want to be playing like Peril on turn 2. That's what they want. They don't want a 3-drop that they have to play and untap with necessarily.
Right. They want to untap. Playing Peril on turn 2 and then this on turn 3 gives you 2 creatures that like when you untap on turn 4 you win. Yeah. If they don't interact, and if they interact, you're like buying yourself time because they're using your mana to interact with your your whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's close. I don't think it's quite there, but I think I wouldn't be surprised seeing it. All right, here's another card that is one of my picks for like one of the best cards in the set, and that is Fellstinger. 2 black for a 3/2 zombie scorpion. Death Touch exploit. When Fellstinger exploits a creature, target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. So, Mauldrifter is a card. Mauldrifter is a card that is seeing modern play. Part of that is because it is an elemental. So it triggers all the elemental things while getting that effect with its evoke cost. But 3 mana is 3 mana to get your Death Toucher, and you get to just hold on to it if you want. If you need to block something, you can sack it to draw 2 cards. Or you can do shenanigans like, Sun Tightening it back or using other effects that get it back, like an Unearth ability. So being able to unearth this and draw 2 cards off of it is helpful as well. Like, it's just like a bunch of different things that are versatile, and it's a zombie, right? Like the reason that Maul Drifter is finally seeing play is there's finally an elemental deck, and it ends up that there could be a zombie deck. And I think this card is ripe to do a lot of things that deck wants to do. Sacrifice creatures, grind out for value, be a body like a 3/2 Death Toucher that's hard to interact with. And
I'm definitely more interested in this in a Scorpion deck, but I do understand what you're going for.
Yeah. Scorpion God. There is a Scorpion commander that does exist. Geralf, Visionary Stitcher, 2 and a blue, 1/4 human wizard legendary creature. Zombies you control have flying. Blue, tap, sacrifice another non-token creature. Create an XX blue zombie creature token where X is the sacrificed creature's toughness. That second ability, it's fine. It'll protect your zombie that dies if you get to untap with him, whatever. The more important one is giving all of your weirdly overcosted 3/3s for 1s and 3/3s for 2s and 4/4s for 2s, etc. Flying for 3 mana.
I mean, zombies don't normally get to fly for obvious reasons. They're like day walkers. They don't fly. That's how zombies are supposed to work classically. And so they usually attack and don't block. They usually enter tapped. The idea that zombies are going to fly now is pretty solid with this card. I definitely agree. It's not a zombie itself, and it's legendary, so it has a couple things going against it there in terms of being like a zombie lord tribal deck. You can't play more than a couple. It doesn't get plussed up.
I think you play 1 though. I think if you're in blue and you're a zombie deck, playing 1 of these is a little bit of a free roll. And like, because its second ability also creates zombies, right? You can sacrifice decayed tokens or other stuff to make it bigger.
You can't sacrifice
non-tokens.
So it has to. But at instant speed, it can save.
Yeah.
It can save your Diagraph Captain, or it can save your new zombie lord from this set. So there is that.
So it can turn the things that were gonna die anyways into creatures. It makes combat blocking really difficult. It is a good blocker. I almost want to try and brew a bug collected company zombie deck.
Sounds fun to me.
Because zombies are so over, the value on all of them is really high, but they're kind of clunky. But collected company loves getting random good 3-drops into play. All right. Next we talk about my boy Odric, Blood Cursed. 1 red, white. Legendary creature, vampire soldier, 3/3. When Odric, Blood Curse enters the battlefield, create X blood tokens, where X is the number of abilities from among flyers. First strike, double strike, death touch, hates, hexproof, indestructible, lifelink, menace, reach, trample, and vigilance found among creatures you control. Annoyingly, does not count defender nor flash, is what I'm finding. But
and doesn't have any of his own abilities.
So he has none of his own abilities. But I've already gotten a bunch of people sending me. So I was very early on Twitter being like, this card is dope. People were really down on it, and I was like, no. And for our Crimson Vow Commander stream, I am building a Odric deck. I have the cards right here. You can see them ready to go. I have to cut 10 cards still. But for Modern, we don't have to talk about Commander where it's a lot easier just to have that in your hand every turn. I've already been sent a lot of what he's seeing play in, which is affinity lists. And the fact that a lot of affinities free roll creatures like Ornithopter and Bromat Courier already have flying and haste and other abilities that he pays attention to, and he comes into play and if he creates 2 blood tokens, that's a good rate, right? You get a 3/3 plus 2 additional artifacts for all the things you need. If he creates 3, you're above rate for what you're normally getting 3 artifacts into play in old new affinity lists, allowing you to get all these new affinity creatures into play for free. So he comes in with a lot of artifacts, and then help solve some of the problems affinity decks have, where it's obviously you get tokens you can sacrifice to Arcbound Ravagers all day long, but it also gives all of your lands that you don't need after turn 2 in affinity cycling. It gives all of your random one, if you draw a Memnite, and you're at a point where a 0/1 for 1 is, or a 0 mana 1/1 is bad, just cycle it. Use the blood tokens to get rid of it. It curves out your draws in the deck so much more than it used to get, and you get Odric. There's other blood cards, so we'll talk about once we get to enchantments or artifacts. Other blood cards that are seeing play in affinity already as well, because I think just that's where the first home to look at is. But Odric has potential there for sure, not to mention in Reanimator strategies and other places.
Yeah. I think so too. I think it's interesting. I think the thing you're talking about with Affinity is cool. I do think like a 3-mana creature in an Affinity deck is a little jank unless you're talking like Etch Champion is like the classic at that slot, and like it's obviously there to win the game on its own, not to give you some reach. And also in those Affinity decks, like what are the abilities we're talking? Bowmat Couriers and flying off of Ornithopters?
Haste, flying, first strike, and vigilance. I think isn't there a flyer with vigilance? I forget what the last one is.
I don't know if there's I don't know if they still play Vault Scourges, but I mean flying.
Vault Scourge doesn't have flying. It can only be blocked by flyers.
No, it does. You're thinking of.
I'm thinking of Signal Pass.
Signal Pass.
Yeah. Vault Scourge has lifelink. That would you would play with Vault Scourge. You'd have to start playing with it. You'd bring that in. You'd change your deck to make this work, but there are cards out there that fit with that that are good enough. There's you also could play with Ginger Brutes, which are also really good.
Yeah, I mean, this comes down. I mean, if this comes down and makes you, like you said, 3 or 4 artifacts with like a Ravager, that could be like the difference of just game over right there.
Right, exactly. And if it's not game over, it's at least going to make every card you draw better. I'm going to skip that one. Savior of Allenbach. 1 white for a 1/2 human shoulder with training. Whenever this creature attacks with another creature with greater power, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. Whenever it trains, exile up to 1 other target creature from the battlefield or a creature card from a graveyard. When it leaves the battlefield, put the exiled cards onto the battlefield under their owner's control. So this A can reanimate stuff out of your graveyard, and B can O-ring stuff out of your opponent's board. But you have to attack with it, which makes it probably miss playability.
Yeah, because it's just because it comes down as a 1/2. So to make this thing bigger, you have to be attacking with something bigger for it to get past a 1/2.
Well, that's easy.
Yeah, but it's a 3-drop, so like
that. Well, yeah, it's just a 3-drop that has to attack to do anything, and then what it does is just kind of be a mediocre removal spell. I think is more.
Yeah, I don't think this card's good.
I don't think I will.
This card's fun.
I don't think I will ever attack with this thing without having it. Like any deck that is playing this will have something with 2 power in the deck, right?
I just think it's fun, but I think it costs 3. So to even do anything with it, it requires you to get to the 4th turn. And it's a pretty dubious attack step anyway with this card, so yeah, I think it's kind of bad. Next up, we have Welcoming Vampire. This is white 2 for a 2/3 flying vampire. Whenever 1 or more other creatures with power 2 or less enter the battlefield under your control, draw a card. This ability triggers once only each turn. So, I mean, look, it's a 2/3 vampire that flies for 3, right? So it's fine.
Decent stat.
Yeah, it should be a 3/3 to compete with like classic Olivias and stuff like that. But
this ability is way better than what Olivia is doing. Olivia's like, when you
1
attack,
or more other
pay
creatures,
1 mana, put a +1/+1 counter on something and discard a card, right?
Yeah, both of them are kind of, there's both of them are kind of medium. Power 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. So, I mean, it has to be 2 or less. A lot of vampire decks are playing vampires with power 2 or less. I mean, that's a lot of what's out there. They grow. That's the whole premise behind vampires. So that's just why this is good. To be honest with you, I'm wondering why this card... I'm kind of wondering why this card didn't just cost 2 mana and had worse power toughness stats.
Because that ability on a 2-mana card would be one of the best. Like white does not get this ability, right? Like this is new to white's color pie.
It only triggers once each turn, though.
Sure.
So, like, I mean, imagine you played this card. Let's say this card was a 2/2 flyer for 2.
I mean, you're describing Dark Confidant.
Let's say it was a 2/1 flyer for 2. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So, 2/1 flyer for 2 that's a vampire, but it doesn't trigger every turn. Confidant does. You have to have a creature enter the battlefield. So, and it has to be a creature that has the correct power. If you're top decking lands, this card's doing nothing. It does mean you can cast one of these into another one of these. But I honestly think probably the move then would have been make this a 3/1 that doesn't fly, that has the 2 power trigger, so it can't trigger off other copies of itself. I just think that playing this for 3 and then untapping, like it's a cool card. It doesn't have lifelink. It's missing like the extra gear that makes this playable to me. That's why I'm trying to talk my way into it. Like just not quite.
I just think if it was a cheaper cost thing, you're going from, oh, this could see play maybe, to, oh, this is going to be one of the best white cards ever printed.
Could be, yeah. It just doesn't excite me. It excites you?
I think it's cool. I think like this ability on a white card is really importantly something added to the format, and like we're just talking about vampires, but I think like any low to the ground white attacky deck wants this effect. honestly, like talking about affinity, this is another card that like, oh, this gives a lot of value for that deck when it kind of needs it. I don't know. It's interesting. Let's get to the next card. Cemetery Protector, 2 white human soldier, 3/4 flash. When it enters the battlefield, exile a card from a graveyard. Whenever you play a land or cast a spell, if it shares a card type with the exiled card, create a 1/1 white human creature token.
I mean, I think this card is good. I don't think this card is busted. It's a little expensive. But I do think the fact that it has flash in a control deck is good. Like, you can play this end of turn to clear out the flashback spell or whatever you think is coming, or in response to their reanimation or whatever they're doing. And if you're playing in some sort of a control shell, like, this could just be a sideboard card for that control deck that they're bringing in against graveyard decks. They play this at instant speed to remove the target in response. And now, if it's not that, and like, you know, if it's a main deck card, then they just like end of turn, remove a fetch land, and you know, whenever they get a land into play, they get a creature, which is what control decks want, right? They want to be able to just get that incremental value.
I like it. I like it as a cool sideboard card for control decks to play against reanimator decks.
Yeah.
Or for aggro white human decks that want a 4-drop that has flash to be able to play, and then sometimes just get your graveyard opponent because you can flash this in response to them needing something from their yard, and now they don't have it anymore.
Well, I think the other place that I see this working is if you wanted to main deck this as a 1/of in a blue-white control to shell, I think it's good enough against the field that it's going to be really important in some matchups. But I also think that if you're like, oh, got it, this comes down in this matchup and does absolutely nothing, I'm just going to exile one of my own fetch lands, and now every time I play a land for the rest of the game, I get a 1/1. Like, that's pretty good. For those blue-white decks, that's good. That's exactly the kind of thing that they want.
Right.
They block, they stay alive, they build up a little army of attackers, you know?
Yeah, I agree. All right, next card is Maniform Hellkite, 2 red dragon, 4/4 flying. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create a XX red dragon illusion creature token with flying and haste, or X is the amount of mana spent to cast that spell. Exile that token at the beginning of your end step. This, importantly, unlike a lot of cards in this set, which have like weird, annoying only once a turn riders, does not have that rider. So you can play this on turn 4, untap with it if you get to, and put like a ton of power into play, just because every sorcery and instant you cast gets to put a new creature into play. And it's non-creature spell too, so it does count artifacts, planeswalkers, enchantments, etc. It is a 4-mana 4/4 with flying. That's it. You do probably win if you untap with it, though.
Probably, except that it does say the token is equal to the mana spent to cast the spell. So there is the rider there of trying to cheat something into play. You're not going to be able to cheat into play a delve spell and get like a 5/5 out of it.
Sure. I'm thinking more out of like Storm as a side, like play this as a sideboard option against decks when they bring in Graveyard Hate against you. You bring this in. Now your graveyard doesn't matter.
You're like desperate ritual. I get a 2/2. And you're like chain it into another one.
Yeah.
I get another 2/2.
Desperate ritual.
Chain it into Past in Flames. I get a 4/4.
Yeah. Into Manamorphose into like here I play 5 spells. I now have 10 power of flyers in play, and this 4/4 dragon swing for 14. Or play this in the middle of your Storm Chain, and now all of those cards work with it. If, like, say they don't get the Graveyard Hate, but you can get to the point where you have 4 extra mana. This is a instant speed empty the Wardens that you play at the beginning of the chain versus the end.
Yeah, that's cool.
Mirror Hall Mimic, 3 blue spirit 0/0. When you can have it. It's a clone. You can have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield except its spirit in addition to other types. So 4-mana clone. It has Disturb, though, that lets you enchant a creature at the beginning of your upkeep. Create a token that's a copy of the enchanted creature, except it's as a spirit in addition to its other types. Importantly, it is not a creature you control, but you do get the token.
Interesting.
Not as relevant in Modern on that end, but you do get to just like have a weird clone effect out of your graveyard. I think it's probably off power level, but the fact that it is strictly better than clone is interesting.
Yeah, that is pretty interesting. That's where we are now. Is that clone is just like clone at this point. Clone was a rare back in the day.
I think you could print clone it uncommon, and like in a core set.
I was gonna say,
environment.
I was gonna say, could you print clone at common?
No, from a limited perspective. I think Clone is a weird card to have it common.
I mean,
well,
it's hard to understand.
Like you don't want to have multiples of them. Like you don't want people having too many of them. I think on common's fine though, for sure. It's like people would have like 4 clones in their deck, right? Like in that, I don't think is a fun play pattern.
I think you make a good point. Our next card is Overcharged Amalgam. Blue 2, zombie horror, flash flying, 3/3. I love these stats. Exploit. When Overcharged Amalgam exploits a creature, counter target spell, activated ability, or triggered ability. Okay, so this card plays into the like, it's the realm of cost that we've seen over the last 5 years a handful of times now, where blue 2 creatures that counter spells, like this is like a rate that we've seen at least 1 or 2 other times. There's a willingness,
and all the time when it happens, that card is good.
Yeah, there's a willingness to print this, and because this one doesn't leave you with the creature if you just exploit itself, but that's because it also targets activated or triggered abilities, and if you just get the card by itself, it's a 3/3 flyer, as opposed to like classically Mystic Snake was a 2/2, and then the one from a couple years ago was a 3/3, the blue-green one. So yeah, I mean, this card's good. The fact that this card in a blue control deck in Standard, this card will get played for sure. If this card was to get played in Modern, and it's just the deck has plenty of cards in hand, the control deck, and they're just like, yeah, I have all the interaction, I'll just cast this as my win condition. It's a 3/3 flyer. I have all the counter spells and removal. I'll just play this and I'll win in 6 turns.
Yeah.
Like
this card to me, like also for a, like, if I'm playing a flash blink creature deck, like this and like into Restoration Angel, like I just like eat 2 of my opponent's fetch triggers if I'm on the play. So like their turn they like never can get to 4 mana ever. Against some opponents might just be backbreaking. You also just get to like counter other effects.
You do have to exploit a creature. So if you're going to exploit itself, then you can't rest.
No.
So you have to be playing a deck.
Yeah, you have to have creatures, right? Like you have to have like
Wall of Omens.
Right, but that's the deck with Wall of Omens. Like this with Wall of Omens, this Restoration Angel, and maybe like Flicker Wisp or some other like 2 mana card that I want to blink and get value out of seems pretty dope. And like I dream of sacrificing Wall of Omens to Overcharged Amalgam. Next card is Olivia Crimson Bride. 4 black-red, legendary creature, vampire noble, 3/4 flying haste. When Olivia Crimson Bride attacks, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped and attacking. It gains when you don't control a legendary vampire, exile this creature. So one of the reasons this card is interesting to me is Goryo's Vengeance options, but it allows you to turn a Goryo's Vengeance into a regular reanimation effect. You don't need to get a legendary. You can get a non-legendary creature with her. So it allows you to get like, especially Grishold brand decks, get like the weird stuff that you normally wouldn't be able to get. It also is like a resilient card that if you just get interacted with and get put to the position when you're now at turn 6, it's a fine card to cast on its own that like wins you the game when you attack with it, right? It's like a 6 mana I win in a deck that has Grizzlebrand in its graveyard. I
think the Vengeance plan is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty clever. Yeah, I like this card. I mean, how much is the blanking right now? What's it Through the Breach? 5 mana or 4 mana?
Through the Breach is 5 mana.
5 mana, so that doesn't do much to save you.
Well, but it does turn your Through the Breaches. But I guess like the argument is if you're not playing her, you'd be playing a different big creature that Through the Breach would draw. So it would just always be in placement
and this
of that.
already has haste.
Yeah.
This already has haste.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I think your plan is the best plan.
I think
that's
this
the best
is
thing I've heard
kind of your Through the Breach, right? This is or it's competing in that same spot as a more resilient,
agreed.
Works with more of the cards you're playing option. It's just a little expensive. All right, this card is.
I mean, Legacy in Legacy with like any kind of sneak attack deck.
Oh yeah, that's
sneak
cool
attack
too.
Sneak attack reanimator, like sneak attacking this in.
I think that like the argument with there is that you just play like why is it not just another Eldrazi?
Yeah.
In Modern, you just don't have a lot of ways to do this. So yeah, it's close. I think I wouldn't be surprised if I see it play. I think there's maybe something cool you could do. I think it might be just too expensive. She's really cool though. Hallbreaker Horror, 5 blue, Kraken Horror, 7/8 flash. This spell can't be countered. Whenever you cast a spell, choose up to 1. Return target spell you don't control to its owner's hand. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. The thing I didn't realize when I first read this card, and the world didn't realize, and now it is a $15 card, is versus before when it was like a $2 card, is that when it enters, it's not when it enters the battlefield, bounce a thing. It's not like big Venser. It's every spell you cast from now on is Venser.
Yeah. Yeah, true. It's really, 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 really good. I mean, it does cost 7, so like let's not pretend it doesn't.
But it does,
just because it's good.
Like
things that cost 7 should be good.
Yeah,
yeah it is a pretty backbreaking resolution if you can get it to come down.
Like Flash and Uncounterable allow that. Like to me, Flash kind of removes at least 1, if not 2 mana from a spell, right?
Yeah.
Like, and then like just playing with one of these. It's also not a legendary creature, so you can persist it. And you can unmark to grave it.
Right. You can just put it. Yeah, true. Just Footsteps of the Goryo. Just put this into play on turn 3 if you want to.
On turn 2,
it just stays in play,
persist. Right? Remember, like they printed persist.
Oh yeah, right. Persist just exists now.
Footsteps of the Goryo. Get that out of my life. Persist. Yeah, like so you just have a 6/7 this in play on turn 2 or on turn 3, like without really working too hard. Like it's now one of the best reanimator targets in the format, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
And that deck, and what's cool about that deck is that deck, like Unfaithful Mending or Faithful Mending, is an instant.
The blue-white card,
so you're now turning your like loot card that gains you 2 life into a counter spell.
Yeah, I missed that on this card. I mean, it'll be, if it's $15, it'll be one of the rares that people are excited to open.
Everyone missed it, and then everyone realized it, and it went from being a $2 card to a $15 card, like within this week. Blood Fountain. Black for an artifact. When Blood Fountain enters the battlefield, create a blood token. So it's 2 artifacts for 1 black mana. This is the other card I was talking about. 4 mana, tap it. Return 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand.
You have to sacrifice it. But...
Yeah. Sorry. Sacrifice it. 3 of the blacks, tap, sacrifice it, grab 2 graveyards. People are already playing this. This is a card that has already cycled in. Just like 1 mana, get 2 artifacts into play is like so above rate for what Affinity is trying to do, and like Urza decks are trying to do, and decks that just like want as many tokens in play as possible want. And its other abilities aren't irrelevant. You get to loot, you get to rummage, you get to buy your creatures back late game if you just like are grinded out. So yeah.
This card's good. I imagine a deck that I would want to play that's like doing white salvage type effects alongside this. And then that red Reckless Fireweaver card that I like so much, that each opponent takes 1 whenever an artifact comes into play. And you could like, they'd kill the Fireweavers, but then like this would get back your Fireweavers to just recast them, and then like potentially getting these back with some sort of white salvage thing, and like that sort of a deal in my mind seems really sweet. I have a feeling, and I've been saying this for a while, but I haven't brought it up in a little while on here. The next time they print Reckless Fireweaver 2.0, like the next time that's a thing that happens and we get another version of that card that is as aggressively costed, that's going to just be a deck. That'll just be a very good way to kill people in Modern, because I play that card a lot in various formats because I already find it to be super fun. Like you've played against me, and I've played that card a bunch of times.
I literally have a copy of it printed here for this Odric deck to be proxied into it.
It's just really good. Like you can just do a lot of damage with that card.
Right, for sure. Next card is Dreadfuge. Dreadfuge. Black sorcery. Target player reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it with mana value 2 or less. That player discards that card. Or you can cleave 2 and a black. Target player reveals their hand. You may choose a non-land card from it. That player discards their card. So for 1 mana, you have a worse Inquisition of Kozilek. For 3 mana, you have a better Thoughtseize.
I mean, it's an interesting card considering Modern and the fact that like so many things just cost 1 anyway. 1 or 2, right? Like this just gets rid of Ragavan. It just kills Ragavan outright, which is a pretty good way to start. And then I think this card's probably pretty playable, actually. Now, the one argument against it is that in Modern, when you do cast this card for 3 mana as like a top deck later in the game, they're probably only holding on to that card because it's an instant they'll play in response, or like it's a counterspell they were saving, and like they just you just got rid of their counterspell, I guess, which is fine, sort of. It's fine.
I think it's a cool card, like, against Lurrus decks. It sucks that it doesn't exile them. Like, if it exiled them, I would be all in on this card.
Yeah.
The fact that it doesn't exile it, I mean, we talked about this on last week's episode, me and Nikachu, and it was kind of like anything that doesn't exile doesn't matter against Lurrus. Lurrus is better than that, so it's not going to do enough. And that's, I think, definitely its main issue. I also think it's just like it's worse than Inquisition of Kozilek, and it's worse than Thoughtseize.
Right, and those cards are good, and you would just play those cards if you wanted
them.
Do you need
the 12 of those? Yeah, and that's its big limitation. All right, next card, and this is, I think, on my list for one of the better cards in the set. Wash Away. For 1 blue, counter target spell that wasn't cast from its owner's hand. Or Cleave, 1 blue, counter target spell. 1 blue, counter target Cascade target is already like a relevant ability in the format.
Yep. It is indeed.
And that like includes collected company stuff. Like there's a lot of different ways in the format where people are casting stuff from not their hand. Obviously in Commander, this is counter target Commander, right? For 1 blue, which is like an insane play as well. But the fact that its backup plan is counter every other spell under the sun for 3 blue. It's definitely competing with Archmage Charm as the thing you're playing, and maybe as a great sideboard option against anything that's playing with Cascade spells. And that's probably where I would keep it, right? Like being able for 1 mana to be like, no, Crashing Footfalls does not resolve is like where you want this the most.
Also, like because of the fact that the front side of this card is going to be as valuable in Modern often as like cards that have been played classically in sideboards like Ceremonious Rejection, you know, it does feel like the fact that the backup on this card is just cancel. It makes this in the decks that it's going to be good in really good, right? Because the Footfalls deck, you know, like that's trying to go ham on you super fast. It's trying to, so like if they're on the play and they manage to get that out super quick on you and you have this as a response before you can cast a cancel, you're totally happy to have it. But if you don't and it's a different deck and you just like are holding this all game, but then you just get to 3 mana and just now you have a counter spell, seems like a pretty good, I don't know how many you get. I guess I don't really know how many you would play because it depends how valuable the 1 blue version of this is and how prominent those decks are. But in terms of, it's a pretty versatile counterspell. This
is a card I would love to have 1 in my sideboard and 1 in my main deck. Like hedge my bets, and in matchups where it's good, bring in both. Matchups it's bad, cut out the 1, and then in the middle, but like all the time, I'll just like maybe have access to it and maybe be able to get like the random like Lurrus trigger card, right? Like, oh, I'm going to lose this turn if they cast that spell. Wash Away. Oh, I'm going to lose if they Cascade here. Wash Away.
Well, because I was going to say, too, like, anytime I've ever played a deck in Modern, what always ends up happening is I get to game 2 with a blue deck, and it's always like, okay, how many counterspells do I have? Because this is a deck that I want counterspells against. But you don't have room in your sideboard to have, like, 6 different counterspells. You often have, like, 3 of whatever the most targeted counterspell that you think you're going to need that weekend is. So that is usually a card like Ceremonious Rejection, or sometimes it's like Negate, or sometimes it's like, you know, Flash Freeze or Mystical Dispute or something like that. Like it just depends what the format's like. So this card's one of those really interesting, really cool ones where as long as the front side of 1 blue is relevant against enough of the decks you need it against, it's going to be a super helpful card to have because there are going to be decks you don't anticipate, like the Control matchup where you're just like, oh, I'm just glad I have more counterspells in my sideboard.
Right.
Like, this is just a good thing for me to have. I don't care that it costs 3. I just need to have trump cards.
Yeah, I agree.
So, yeah.
Alchemist Gambit. 1 red. Take an extra turn after this one. During that turn, damage can't be prevented. At the beginning of that turn's end step, you lose the game. Exile Alchemist Gambit. Or for Cleave, 4 blue, red. Take an extra turn after this one. During that turn, damage can't be prevented. Exile it. You do no longer lose the game.
So it's 3 mana. It's 3 mana Final Fortune at sorcery speed, or it's 7 mana Time Warp, but that also has damage can't be prevented
on both ends, right? So like they can't get bogged out or Teferi's protection. Like you are going to damage them. This is obviously really powerful. There's like weird, cool stuff you could do with obviously like Enter the Infinite or what's the
You mean Sundial of the
Sorry,
Infinite?
Sundial of the Infinite and or can't lose the game for 1 white.
Angel's Grace,
where like you get to like extra turn them and then keep that going. And like this with Sundial the Infinite might be enough, because like this has a relatively okay fail case scenario of like you only cast this on the turn you're going to win anyways if you are able to cast it, or you can get to just the 7 cost point in a blue-red like a Jeskai control deck and just have one of these and like maybe you get there. Am I correct that you can also counter with that creature, the zombie creature, right? You can overcharge the Amalgam, the trigger on the next turn.
Oh, the triggered ability, they'll lose the aim trigger?
Yeah,
I believe
counter
so,
target
yes.
spell, activated ability, or triggered ability. So you can also, and there's a few cards like that are like actually playable. Because I've played in Historic a deck that was playing with like all the different you lose the game effects. You also have Gideon, right? Like this card seems great in that deck, actually. Like I definitely play this card if that deck is viable in the I'm playing with Pax, I'm playing with this, I'm playing with a Sundial, I have Gideon, I have Angel's Grace, I have like
because what's great about this one. What's great about this one is like if when you top deck this, because that deck's like when I played that deck, when I was playing that in Historic, I was playing a pretty heavy Planeswalker build because it was the best value to be getting out of your extra turns because you're already playing Gideon. So this is really good in that deck because you're just the extra turns are just hitting you with land drops. So you're just going to draw this when you have 7 mana to cast it a lot of the time.
Right. And playing this is like a 1 over a 2 of as an additional like copy of that card, which is one of the better cards in the deck. Yeah, I really the other one that goes with it is the end of the turn card, right? It's this and the end of the turn. Glorious end. And I would, that's a sweet deck. I always loved that deck. All right, Path of Peril, 1/black, destroy all creatures with mana value 2 or less, or cleave 4 white/black, destroy all creatures. I think this is worse than Damnation. Like if Damnation didn't get printed, I'd be way more hyped about this card. Or Damn.
And Damn's hardly even seeing play.
Yep.
It's like, which is surprising.
It's just the decks that are playing white and black don't want to destroy all creatures, and there is better removal to kill one creature.
I'm like so bummed out, and some of this is going to change because this is just going to happen over time, but I'm like so bummed out that all of these like really fancy foils that I open in my Horizons 2 collector booster by and large are just tanked in value. I like opening like etched foil ignoble hierarch. I was like, oh, that's just a great open, and it's like $6. Or like opening like etched foil Sword of Sinew and Steel. I'm like, oh, this is a great open, and it's like $9. Like Damn is like $1.50. I'm just like, what?
Yep.
Like what?
I mean, on one hand, it means these like very playable cards in every format are really inexpensive, but on the other hand, that I agree. Sell when you have them that they're worth a lot of money. We have 4 more cards left, Ben. Don't worry. Change of Fortune, 3 and a red. Sorcery, discard your hand, then draw a card for each card you discarded this way. It's a not Wheel of Fortune. The blue one.
Time Twister?
No, everyone discards their hand and you draw the cards equal to the little highest converted mana cost.
Windfall?
It's a windfall, but just for you. So you don't have to let your opponent draw cards. It also costs 4 mana, but it's also modern legal.
Yeah, I feel like this card is kind of your style, right?
Yeah, I love this card. This card's really dope. I think it's worse than the land version, Valakut Awakening. Not Valakut Awakening.
Yeah, Valakut Awakening.
This Valakut Awakening, right? Like I think that card is better than this.
Yeah, that card was like your favorite card from that whole set.
It's one of the best cards printed in that set. I mean, still seeing a lot of play. So I think that card is better, but this is also interesting and can do stuff.
Yeah.
I think this is better in like maybe more like CDH worlds than that is, but they're both pretty good. The fact that
you can't, there's no cheat on this cost. It does cost you 4 mana to use it, so it's a little skeptical there, like what you'll be able to do with it the turn that you. But it is good though.
Next is Edgar's Awakening, 3 black, and maybe one of the cards I'm most annoyed with this in this set. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. When you discard Edgar's Awakening, you may pay a black. When you do, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Couldn't have this just been Madness Reanimate? Make it 3 mana. Make it 3 mana Madness Reanimate. It's like one of the biggest story spotlight cards in the set, so it's really important. Why can't this just be 5 mana Reanimate or Madness 3 mana? Why can't that card exist?
Wait, so what's the story moment? He gets killed and then they reanimate him?
No, he has been in like a slumber, like for thousands of years, right? Like he is the first vampire, right? Edgar Markov is the very first one, I think, in the multiverse. right? Like Edgar Markov is the first vampire. He had a son who was a planeswalker, and all of the other vampires we see are because Sorin got thirsty while traveling around.
So Edgar's going to wake up and find out that Sorin's been wrecking people.
No. Like Edgar is the bad guy. Sorin's the good guy in this combo. He's been keeping the balance. He created Avacyn because the vampires were getting too spicy. Olivia was like, oh, I want to get spicy. I want to just murder people. What am I going to do? Oh, why don't I marry Sorin's dad or grandfather? I always forget on that line. So I'm going to say Sorin's dad. Why don't I marry Sorin's dad? And now I'm in charge. Sorin can go to, Zendikar for all I care.
Is Edgar like sexy older vampire character?
No, he is not sexy.
He's not.
He's a card. He has a card.
Yes, he looks all like old and
yeah. He looks kind of like Emperor Palpatine.
Yeah, okay.
The bad version.
Does he get to start looking younger as he like eats people?
No, not that we've seen.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yep.
And then what was all the controversy with the like different female characters? There's a blonde and people were like, who is this?
I don't know.
No?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh.
Leo. Was it in Discord today?
No.
Okay.
I thought I saw it on Twitter. I thought I saw people talking about like who are the blonde characters that were used in the marketing for this set?
Oh! It wasn't a controversy. They don't have a card. So you saw Vorthos Mike posted it. Was like, who is this? Why don't they have a card? And she is wearing a wedding dress. So it's like, why is some other blonde lady coming to this wedding in a wedding dress? And then the trailer, which apparently you have not seen, Crimson Vow is like animate, like, now they do CGI full-on trailers. The full-on trailer looks like it's their wedding. It's like her and another guy. And it ends up that they're just the appetizer. Like they like think they're getting married. They go there. There's a bunch of vampires there. They get floated on top of this, like, like a chocolate fountain.
Yeah.
Imagine a person-sized chocolate fountain. They get put on top of it, and then Olivia rips their throats out on their like wedding day. And she's, it's like brutal. It's really good. I recommend watching the trailer.
That sounds savage. And then everybody, it's like the scene at the beginning of Blade. They're just all feasting on this guy that shows up.
And then she gets married to Edgar.
Oh, she's just a human, and they just eat her.
Yeah. She thinks it's her wedding day to this guy, and nope, they are they're the cocktail hour appetizer. They're the chocolate fountain.
He thought it was his wedding day too.
Both of them did.
Wow, can you imagine?
No, it's last two cards are the lands, Deathcap Glade, and this is the cycle, right? So this is the slow lands. These are the enemy ones. When it enters the battlefield tapped, unless you control two or more of their lands, green, black. I actually think these lands are great. I think for modern, the biggest problem is 1 mana and 2 mana turns are so important, but that's a pretty like slow roll as far as value lands for the format. Like if you're trying to get into modern, these are lands you can play in a budget modern deck. Like these are totally playable. The fact that you can come into play untapped after turn 2 is like, you're going to be able to stack your basics and other lands that you have to make it so that this never comes into play tapped, and you'll be always happy. So I do really like these.
I want to push back on that.
Always is strong, but most of the time.
If you're playing a 4 of one set, you're still going to get screwed sometimes where you only have one land in hand or you have 2 of these.
You should not keep one land in hand in this. Yeah, but you can stack it so like you can. Rarely do you. There are going to be rare decks where you need 1 drop into 2 drop.
If you I think you could build a budget deck in Modern that plays 1 of these and maybe 2 of these. But if you go past 2, I think you're going to find situations where you're like, I would just rather be playing a basic.
I don't know if I agree with that, actually. I think you could play 4 of these for the Zendikar double-sided lands, and
I was going to say if you play
happy. Yeah. And basics. Yeah. Last card, Voldaren Estate land. Tap it, get a colorless. Tap it to pay 1 life. Add 1 mana of any color to spend this mana only to cast vampire spells. 5 mana, tap it, create a blood token. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each vampire you control. I think that last ability is not irrelevant. If the fact that this is tap, make a blood token if you have 5 vampires in play in in a format where there are a lot of vampires that like blood tokens seems fine. The fact that this lets you splash and play Mardu vampires or red-white vampires or black-white vampires and is just a like untapped super mana fixer for vampires is the reason this is going to see play, and its last ability is just gravy. So if there is a vampire deck, I can see this seeing play in Modern. If there isn't a vampire deck, this won't see play.
Yeah, I mean, this is just, we already have Cavern of Souls, and we also already have Unclaimed Territory, so we don't entirely need this, really. But it is another...
I like this more than Unclaimed Territory. The second...
Because you can cast other things.
The third ability is like... the first ability lets you cast other creatures. The third ability, though, letting you actually get loot, like the rummage effect.
Yeah.
Is I think relevant.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think having more of these, but having them be like creature type specific like this, I think makes sense, right? Like having it be in Vampire's Land, just like we have the one for Elementals that people play, Primal Beyond, I think it's called.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
for sure.
So.
All right, that was it. That is our set review. Once again, we have been able to pull off full set review in one episode. Dab, nice. Dab. Big thank you, Ben. I am glad you're back. I hope you're feeling better. Thank you, all of our watchers and listeners. If you like content like that, once again, hit that like and subscribe button. Even if you got that question wrong, it's always appreciated. If you want, come follow us on Twitter. I'm at Kess Wiley. He's at Ben Bateman Media. We are at the MMcast. Thank you, Corbin Hostler, for all the work you did this last weekend, going over stuff. And we're excited to see you all next week. We'll be doing a whole breakdown on what happened at Magic the Gathering Las Vegas. And we'll have some cool guests in the next couple weeks as well. And we're super hyped.
Yeah, and if you guys were caught wind of any of it, because I think it actually happened when I had to start taking time off. I can't remember if we announced this on the show or not, but I had to cancel the whole entire tour that I was going on that I should be on tour right now for. Unfortunately, I had back surgery and I had to do it, and there was no getting around it. So the whole tour got postponed to June, July. Anybody who was planning on seeing me, your tickets are good for those shows, all the same cities. I can't wait. I'll be announcing the actual dates of those fairly soon. It'll be taking place throughout the summer, June, July, maybe even in August a little bit. And if you guys haven't already checked it out, I have a brand new song that came out 1 month ago called Happiness. It hit me today that on other platforms than Spotify, the songs have done pretty well, but the way these are all moving, I'm gonna cross 40,000 streams on my original 3 songs on Spotify.
Awesome.
Here in a couple days.
Nice.
I started in April and I'll have hit 40,000 on Spotify, which is with no music background to speak of. I'm pretty happy with that. I was pretty proud of that. So I thought that was pretty cool for anybody who has checked it out. And a number of you have sent me messages saying that you obviously, had listened to the podcast and you jumped over there to check it out. I really appreciate those of you that did that. It means a lot to me to support that. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah. And thanks everyone. I guess check out Battle Bosses. It's now for sale. If you go to the website, kess.co/battlebosses or battlebosses.com. And otherwise, thanks everyone. We'll talk to you next week. Peace.
This has been a production of Time Traveler Media, sending podcasts into the future.